Yep, the last two holdout Walmart stores in the Antifa stronghold of Portland are closing their doors, which means that city will have 0 Walmart locations. The company says this is due to poor financial showing, but just a few months back, their CEO sang a different tune, saying that theft will force stores to push prices higher or close altogether if something isn't done to control the massive theft issue. And guess what? Boom, it happened. Nearly 600 employees in Portland and the surrounding area will now be jobless, all because thugs in this country, and particularly in Dem-run hellscapes like Portland, know they can steal and take and face little to no consequences. They've been trained to believe taking things you didn't pay for or that don't belong to you is a form of justice or reparation, so it's no damn wonder how we got here. And if Walmart, one of the largest corporations in the world, is feeling the sting of mass theft, can you imagine what smaller stores, businesses, and convenience stores go through when crap like this happens day in and day out? And it's not just the material loss either. Shoppers who are there to actually obey the civil code and buy their items are scared crapless to go into these stores for fear they'll get caught up in the mayhem or even catch a damn elbow or worse. And do you think any of the people involved in this ratchet melee get charged or punished? I'm going to go with no. Democrats have had to answer somewhat for violent crime, like old Beetlejuice bug in Chicago, but by and large, no Democrat politicians have had to answer for retail theft and crime. But Democrats will never acknowledge shoplifting as a crime, and why? Because they can't blame guns or climate change or any of their usual BS scapegoats. They can only blame themselves and their thug-ass constituents. You know, it's a crying shame people can't even go to a damn Walmart to save a little money and shop for less. You know, when I was growing up, the worst thing you'd see at Walmart was maybe a butt crack or an exposed beer gut. But this is a whole new can of worms. And now that Target has gone all woke ass with chest binders and BLM paraphernalia, well, I guess we'll all just have to Instacart or DoorDash and live on a prayer. I don't recognize my country anymore. I really don't.
You are such an awesome mom for bringing your kid out to a family-friendly drag show, ladies and gentlemen.
So the great state of Tennessee has taken the completely necessary and decent step of banning cross-dressing grown men from performing simulated sex acts in front of children. If you're wondering why the left could possibly be upset about that, well, that makes 3 of us. Joining me now is the man who has fought tooth and nail to get this legislation to the finish line, political activist Robbie Starbuck. So my audience has now seen that clip numerous times. I'm sure you've seen it hundreds of times, unfortunately. But the fact that the left wants children to be exposed to that, I think it's really a sign of where we are with the modern day Democrat Party. But I know that you've been fighting for this legislation. It's finally across the finish line. The country is upset about it, or at least the liberals are upset about it. What has the reaction been to you in all of the interviews that you've done and all of the questions you've taken on this?
Well, what's interesting with the interviews is that every mainstream media reporter who has come and reached out to me, I've had the same response to them. I said, I'll give you as much time as you want. I'll sit down with you. I'll answer all your questions. But on one condition, you have to say that you will put either a screenshot or a video of one of these sexually explicit shows so that your readers have that context of why we went after getting this law passed, okay? Because it doesn't have to do with the fact that these are grown men dressing up as women, which I may find creepy on a personal level, but that's not illegal, okay? What bothers me is that they're doing this with children, and it's the sexualization of children. And if they're not willing to let their readers know that, we have a serious problem. But like you said, you know, I think that the left is mad about this, yes, but on a country level, I think the country agrees with this. Right. You know, on a broad level, I haven't run into anybody, normal people, that is upset about this. The only thing I've seen is some people be confused, thinking that we ban drag in total. And that's a product of the media helping the left push this narrative that we went and did something we didn't do.
But I want to also go into that. That is just so lazy.
Yeah.
For people to be outraged about something, if you want to be outraged about a new law and don't even bother to read the new law, and I'm not talking about reading in its entirety, I mean, you just skim it. Just skim it and you would know that it's in front of children. I read it the other day on the show when I did my final thoughts for it. It explicitly says near schools in front of children. It has nothing to do with banning drag. And I actually put in my final thoughts as well, because we're here in Nashville. We know that this is a blue city. We know it's a very artsy city. They had an Instagram page that I follow because it's got food and entertainment advice on it for Nashville. It's called Do 615. And they had slides on there about how to contact the ACLU if you're going to lose your job, hotlines to call if this is going to cause you stress, pain, and anxiety. I mean, what does that say? Forget the rest of the country. What does that say about Nashville, that there are Nashvillians, our fellow Nashvillians, who are so distraught that they can't perform simulated sex acts, sexy dance in front of kids?
I mean, it's lunacy. There's no other way to describe it. The idea that there's people out there, as upset as they are, that you can no longer go and spread your legs in front of children in Tennessee and show them your genitals is really it's mind-blowing. It really, and it should be to everybody. It's ludicrous. And I don't know if it's the gross distortion of it that the media has facilitated by these left-wing activists who really do want to do this, but the idea that there's even an industry for this, there's some industry where people have jobs to go do this in front of children is, again, mind-blowing. I think we've got to get to a place where we can at least agree on the facts. You talked about the bill. Everyone should read it. It is the most readable bill of all time. It is literally not even a full page. Okay, if you can't read that bill, you shouldn't be doing anything in politics. Okay, you shouldn't have any activism, nothing. You should keep your mouth shut if you can't read this bill. It is very short. It's explicitly clear. And it's simply about the sexualization of children. And you know what I don't hear any of them talking about? Is the fact that it never says the word drag in it. It talks about the types of performers, which includes people who impersonate women, but it also includes everyone else. You can't strip in front of children. Like you and I right now, if we had children in the room, we can't do some sexy show for the kids.
Right.
That's already something that everybody understood. This is just simply making sure the law fits the reality we're sadly living in.
And it's unfortunate that we have to have a law like this. It's unfortunate we have to say, hey, you can't sexy dance in front of kids.
Yeah.
But here we are. This is 2023. It's the process of grooming. But I posted my thoughts on this the other day, and of course, I've got a lot of people that agree, but you have a few people, even that agree with it, that say, listen, a law is fine, but what do you do about the moms and dads and the aunts and the uncles and the guardians that were willfully taking their children to these drag shows? They wanted these kids to be here. These kids weren't exposed to this by anything other than their parents bringing them there. What do we do? Is there anything that we can do about that? And what does that say about the state of parenthood today?
Wow, that's a loaded question because there's a lot there. Okay, number one, I hold the parents just as responsible as the performers in almost every case. The one caveat I could maybe give it is if a parent didn't understand it was going to be a sexual show, they don't know much about this, and they see it's some kind of brunch and it says all ages and a friend invites them and they go to it and then they're shocked to find out it's a sexual show where some grown man is spreading their legs to their child. I could conceive that maybe that could be possible, but the performers are really where we can stop this, and that's what the law does, is it simply says, look, if you do this, and if you do it twice, especially, it turns into a very serious felony. It's a misdemeanor the first time, felony second time, and that stops there from ever being the chance of a parent bringing a child to one of these events. And so that was really my concern with this, is how do we prevent this from happening? Now, in terms of culpability legally for the parents, that's not in the bill. However, me personally, if I was in control of, a magic wand that could say, hey, what are we going to do? I would say there should be consequences for adults who bring their kids to these types of things. I think that it's something that, again, you talk about the state of parenting in our country. It shows that some people are valuing their own sort of important, and you see this with the transgender thing, where there's moms who see their own popularity as more important than the well-being of their child. And that's disgusting to me. You've really got to start to piece apart what has happened in a society where parents are valuing that over their children.
And I feel like a lot of this argument, and the reason we're having it, the reason this is happening, is because there are so many in this community. I call them the Rainbow Mafia, because there is the LGBTQ movement, there's that, and then there's the Rainbow Mafia sect of that movement that wants to force this down people's throats, and they feel, to me, that they need to do these kind of things to make it more normalized, make that lifestyle more normalized, and they want to bring it all in together to this homophobia. If you don't like this, you're transphobic, you're homophobic, that somehow this performing in front of children is the same thing as being homophobic or transphobic. The two have nothing to do with one another, but I feel like this is their message and this is the hill they want to die on, and they're using the LGBT movement to really shield themselves from the true perversion that they want here.
That's absolutely what's going on. I mean, they ignore the fact that gay and lesbian people and transgender people showed up in opposition to their side. They showed up to support this bill. There are plenty of people who fall under, whatever identity group they're choosing to fall under, who don't believe it's okay to sexualize children. And, it kind of says something about those people you're talking about, that when you talk about the sexualization of children, or if you do a broad bill like we did this time that says you simply cannot sexualize kids, whether you're gay, straight, whatever, okay, and included them in that bill, included everybody in that, they immediately attached it as an attack on all gay people. That says something about their train of thought, that they hear child sexualization and they say, oh, that's an attack on gay people. That's not something I said.
Right.
That's something they're attaching to it. And I think they should be very careful about that, frankly, because they're doing away with a lot of goodwill that people had built up to just say, hey, live your life. And I think that's not a very wise decision on their part.
Well, that's the thing, too, because I was one of those people that was on the gay issue maybe more socially liberal in those areas. Like, I don't really care about same-sex marriage. That stuff doesn't really bother me. It's not the hill I'm going to die on as a conservative, right? But there were so many conservatives 5-10 years ago that said, hey, listen, there's going to be a snowball effect here.
Yep.
You start along one thing, and then they're going to start doing this and this and this. And a lot of us on the more socially liberal conservative side said, that's ridiculous.
Yep.
And here it is. And it
Here we
just
are.
keeps getting pushed further and further and further. And you're right. We don't care what you do. We don't care what you identify as. Don't shove it down our throats and do not put it in front of children. And they're going to use this, by the way, because I think that there's two very strong lobbies in this country. Well, there's three. There's BLM, there's Big Green, the climate change, and then the Rainbow Mafia. And they are going to use this in 2024. Donald Trump has already said he's going to ban all this stuff, the castration, the mutilation. He already said this. But Ron DeSantis in Florida, again, mischaracterizing his don't say gay, which actually frustrates me because we have to call it that to even refer to it so people know what we're talking about.
This is why we have to name our own bills, by the way.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. But how problematic do you think that is going to be for Ron DeSantis should he announce a run for president?
Not at all. I think it's where do I donate to get them to do this and make this an issue for 2024?
For you, though, but what about independents? Now, I'm with you. I think that this is very popular. But, again, there's a lot of lazy and ill-informed people out there who do believe that he is trying to rid gay from the curriculum.
So there's a poll out this morning. I'll send it to you. It's from a very middle ground pollster, okay? They're not a left or right-wing group. They did this poll. They asked about feelings when it came to having children at these shows. They asked about, the feelings on transgender treatments for children. And they found a wild majority of Americans oppose these things. And then when you talked about teaching sexual subjects at school, you found something around, it was like in the 30s or 40s, believed that you should be teaching this at all, and the rest pretty much said, hey, you should leave this to parents. Okay, so the vast majority, even in those independent groups, are falling into a camp of saying, we're not comfortable with this. And I think when you attach the national stage to whether it be Trump or DeSantis and the ability to just go out there and have the discussion and say, look, nobody's trying to stop people from being gay. I don't care if you're gay. And you can make that, Trump did a good job with it in 2016 by bringing on Rick Grinnell and some other people to make it very clear that, look, there's going to be no discrimination against people for what they choose to do in their private life. And Rick's a great guy. He's a friend of mine. I think those things you can overcome really easily. But making the issue a voting issue in 2024 is going to come back to bite them because normal people, they don't agree with this, including some Democrats. A large chunk of them don't agree with this stuff.
Well, that's good to hear, and I'm glad that people are understanding this. I think you're right, though. This all goes back to a problem that the GOP has had and will continue to have is our messaging. We do not get out ahead of these things. We allow them to set the narrative, and then we spend all of our time defending. We are always reacting. We do something that's great, that most Americans would support, and then we have to react to all the BS they put out there because for some reasons we're really not able to get our side out like the other side is. But we still need to take some onus on this and do better at messaging.
Oh, yeah.
The other part of this, too, is, I think, even more serious. It's the gender transition for children, the chemical castration, the mutilation of children. There are other states that are following leads on this. We got 43 to go, but Mississippi recently as well. Do you think that we can get all states outside of New York and California to jump onto this and say, hey, listen, this is too far for us? Or do you think that the other states are always going to maintain this as a way to be like pro-gender affirmation or whatever they think they're doing?
Truthfully, so I've been talking to legislators in many states, and there's a lot of states that are introducing bills very similar to the one we got passed here in Tennessee and is going to become law. I mean, it's technically not active yet, but it's been signed into law. There's a lot of states that are going to follow our lead here, okay? And it's pretty much red states. And what I see in purple states is maybe a willingness to ban the surgeries, but not the hormones and the puberty blockers. And then you get to the blue states, they won't ban any, they'll ban you as a parent, basically, if you refuse to transition your child. So it's like a wildly different universe in these places, okay? So I think realistically, if you look at these hyper blue states, they're not going to do anything. Even places like Michigan, where there's just too many Democrats in power, the legislature might be able to get something done, but the governor will never agree to it and will veto anything they do. So I think it's really going to come down to sane red states, purple states doing somewhat better than the blue states are going to do, and then the blue states are just going to allow total hedonism and encourage it.
Last thing I want to ask you, because I think this is also going to be very interesting. When you look at some of those swing states, especially in the South, areas that people like Joe Biden really want to win, like South Carolina, and other areas that have always been reliably conservative, Georgia, but now clearly have changed a little bit. I wonder, because if we look at minority voting groups, they are traditionally conservative, and they might consider themselves Democrats, but socially they are more conservative. And I wonder if this could actually be an issue that we could use to reach out to those communities and say, we know you weren't raised like this. Could this be a moment for us to reach across and bring people into the fold with something as simple as protect the children?
That's why I hope the Democrats are dumb enough to make this an issue for 2024, because the answer is absolutely. And we saw this already in the Latino community. Myself being Cuban, I knew as a child, like I was friends with many different Hispanics from different backgrounds. And the one commonality we all had was the family values, faith, and a belief that, the family and those values, they matter more than anything else. And so when we took these issues in 2020 and 2022 to Latino communities, you just saw more and more of them voting Republican. So in the Black community, I think we need to do the same thing with this specific issue, because just like the Latino community, Black communities don't want somebody coming into their school and secretly talking their kid into a gender transition that they do without the parents knowing, because that's what's happening in many of these states. They actually have rules on the books where the teachers hide it from the parents, and the parents only find out once their kid becomes suicidal or, God forbid, something else happens. And, that's something that in each one of those communities, they understand they don't want that happening to their kid. And if one side is pushing it and the other side is against it and will stand up for your child, that means something.
I agree with you. And I think we are really smart to lean into this. Normally I say we should stay out of the social issues. We should focus on our fiscal issues. But this is an area, especially now, hopefully we're done with the masking and the vaxxing and all this. But this and that are two areas I think we could really win on. And I think Virginia is a great example of the other. I think we can really win on this. So as much as I hope that these Democrats come to their senses, if they want to go there, they want to play ball, I think that they're playing a very dangerous game.
Yeah, batter up. We're ready for it.
We are definitely ready. Robbie, thank you for everything that you've done in Tennessee and in other states and working so hard to get this passed. I know that it's been a passion of yours, and it's been a great success for this state. So onward to others, and hopefully we can continue to just protect children, and that shouldn't be controversial. But if it is, call us controversial, I suppose.
Thank you, and thank you for covering it, because so many are refusing to do it.
And I'm sorry that you have to watch those videos so many times.
Me too.
For explanation purposes.
I can't wait until I don't have to ever again.
Yes.
I mean, it's honestly some of the stuff that we're sent, I'm just like, I can't wait for the day that this ends.
Well, it's coming very soon. Robbie, thank you as always, and we'll talk to you really soon.